Welcome to a very fun game of Age of Empires 2, where we're going to get a look at the new and improved Khmer Ballista Elephants with Ballistics. These units are absolutely insane now, and running away from them just isn't an option. We're also going to look at a single dock fish boom play as the Khmer on the map African Clearing, which is going to make it possible to produce this unique unit off of a fast castle play. Let's dive in. Player 1, our opponent, playing as the Huns, has a great town center towards the south of the map, but he's being lamed a little bit by P4. P3, playing as the Armenians, also has a solid TC directly to P1's west. Player 4 on the other team is playing as the Mongols in the south of the map, and also on P4's team is player 8, and he's playing as the Magyars with a really great town center with a big pond and the baobab trees. To P8's east are the final members of the cool colored team, player 5, playing as the Turks, and player 7 playing as the Hindustanis. They're quite close together, so unfortunately, they'll have to share the hunt that's between them, as of course only one of them can eat this rhino, and there aren't a ton of rhinos in this area for them to eat. P6 to their west has an amazing town center, and he's playing as the Spanish. P1 is pinging my town center, and I've got a great TC as well, because I have access to these baobab trees. I don't think there are quite 18 here. Yeah, they're only 14, but that's good for 2,800 wood right next to my town center, so I'm not going to need a wood line for a really long time. I build my houses out in front of my pond, so that when I do build a dock here, I'll be able to protect it, and enemies won't be able to simply walk up and drop towers on my face. P3 to my south, I know he's here, and P1 as well, because player 4 did walk by and lame them. Oh, P7 disastrously kills his rhinoceros. He's lucky this is African Clearing, but also, like I said, there's not a lot of food on this map because he's so close to P5 and P6. So maybe he'll get one more elephant, and that's about it. So that's going to be a really tough start for the Hindustanis player. Player 8 is actually eating a sheep. I'd prefer to see him just putting all of his vills on that one tile of shorefish and waiting until he has a rhino. And P1 is doing this long-range hunting because he doesn't want these zebra to expire, but he also should just eat shorefish. P4 is doing a nice job of bringing in this elephant, and you can't criticize that. And P3 actually has that shorefish approach that I really like to see, where he's got 99% worker efficiency on the super fast collecting shorefish, so you really just can't beat it. You should probably go for that as your standard opening until you bring in your first elephant. That's really the way to play African Clearing. I'm bringing in my first elephant, and I've cleared out a single tile of shorefish because I want to go for a dock approach. And I make sure to get the dock down and not put the rhinoceros on top of the dock position, but it was a little bit close in this game. That would have been a huge mistake. I'm only at 9 pop as my dock goes up because I have the wood line so close to my town center, so this is going to be a really nice fast fishing ship boom. Player 7 has added a lumber camp, and he's got 3 on wood now. He's still got 7 on food, and he's in a pretty tough position, but at least he's Hindustanis and he's got cheaper villagers, and he might be able to afford mills soon. Player 6 has just an amazing eco distribution here. These villagers who are on the shorefish are just super efficient, and this is just an eco you can't beat. It's nice to bring in tons of rhinos, but if you have this type of pond, it doesn't really matter. Player 4 here in the south has now redistributed onto his shorefish, and P1 is doing the same. But I'd really like to see him eat this rhinoceros, and his villagers are kind of all over the place despite having a great TC, and he could be taking a lot more of the shorefish right next to his town center. P3 continues to show off his solid eco management, and he's got really good placement of his rhino under his TC. And I'm doing my best in that regard as well, while I also try to get out some fishing ships, and I make sure to get some more houses placed out in front of my dock position to make sure that I'm securing this area. I don't really need to secure the wood line to the north of my town center because it's not a super typical tower target, though it would be very painful if it did get towered in this game, and it's actually probably one of the best things somebody could hit to displace my entire eco. P5 is going out to these baobab trees, and I love this because these baobab trees are just so efficient. They're so close placed to his town center, and he won't have to walk all this distance to the edge of the map before he can get his wood eco set up. He'll just be able to get it all set up very close to his town center here. I bring in another rhino as I continue to fish boom. I'm at 17 population right now, which is good for the most in the game. I didn't have the fastest building town center, but the fishing ships have made up the difference. Player 1's rhino is a little bit far away from his TC here, and he really should have just gone for the easy one instead of going for the super hard ones. I understand that player 4's laming might have gotten to him a little bit here, but it seems to have affected his decision making, and that's not ideal. P4 doesn't have a ton of food under his town center, and he is pretty much pincered against the edge of the map here, so he'll go for this nice mill, so that's really good. And he's still in the Dark Age, and this is pretty much his entire food economy, so that's not great. Player 8 is doing a nice job, still bringing in rhinos right underneath his town center. P5 has a ton of Hunt Hunters TC. One of them's not perfectly placed, but that's fine. And that Zebra is really well placed. I like to see that. Player 7 is using that wood economy, and he's just going for more mills, trying to get his eco rolling as much as possible and trying to compensate for the fact that he lost that rhinoceros and that he just has a pretty tough map position. P6 continues to have just an amazing eco, and I'm now just pulling in another rhinoceros while I just keep fish booming. And I do go ahead and eat sheep at this stage in the game. I'll go ahead and eat this rhino as well, but I'll leave some bills on sheep as well. With a normal civilization, I only make 5 fishing ships in a fast castle build. But because I have this great wood line, and I also have the Khmer, who don't have to build a market or a blacksmith to advance to the castle age, I'm not going to need to build literally any buildings to go up to castle. This means that I'll be able to save so many of my resources. I'll be able to use all that wood to build fishing traps, and my ships won't go idle. At this stage in the fish boom play, it's all about bringing in as much food as possible underneath your town center. You do start to run out because you're not taking the shorefish with your villagers, so you really want to go ahead and collect as many sheep and rhinoceros as possible. I'd say 5 is really that magic number in terms of rhinos collected, where you're going to feel very comfortable in the build, but if you can only get 3 or 4, you can make up for it with sheep. Everyone on our team is currently going to the feudal age with similar timings, and player 5 will be the first player to arrive for the enemy team. He's getting his barracks up now. It's a little bit late, and since he's not on gold, we'll assume he's going to go for a Turkish scouts play. And as he gets the wood for this stable, presumably, I assume that's what he'll do. Player 8, playing as the Magyars, will likely also go for a stable, and as P5 starts to go up, we will just go ahead and look around the map. I don't love player 6 going for the baobab trees here, because the wood line on the outside of the map is actually pretty close to his town center, and it's a lot more securable, and there are just more trees in total. We'll bring in another rhino as we keep eating sheep underneath our town center, which is really just a standard fixture of a fast castle fish boom play, which really isn't normally a standard fixture of this map. You can see the food collects pretty quickly from these 6 fishing ships, and it really does tick up quite quickly even on shorefish, but we'll start to run out quite soon. It's important to note that these fishing ships cost 450 wood, and the dock cost 150 wood, and they've only collected 600 shorefish in this pond. So it's really been a trading wood for food situation until this point. But once we've got the traps set up for these 6 fish, those 6 fish will produce more than enough food to produce villagers. So they'll form the baseline of our economy, and everything else that we collect will be able to be used for military production. That is what is going to allow us to go for a Ballista Elephant fast castle, because we're going to have way more economy than we would without going for a dock. On African clearing, in general, you don't really want to go for that many farms in the early game because there are so many resources around the map that you can build mills on that collect more quickly than farming economy. We're already on the way up to the next age. We have these fishing ships. That's partly the Khmer benefit, but it's also just the reality of the fishing ship play being so strong. We still would have been able to go up this fast, or even 1 or 2 vills faster if we didn't do the fish, but we're still faster to castle age than anyone else in this game, and we've gone for 6 extra eco units. This is where this build starts to look really strong. And this is really just the start of this build paying off, because we've just built those fishing traps, so we should expect this lead to continue to grow over the next portion of the game. Even though we're not going for a full boom play, simply nobody can keep up with the number of economy units that we have. We will build our first lumber camp now, and we're continuing to use the baobab trees because we're absolutely in the middle of nowhere on this map. If I had access to these big outer wood lines on the outside of the map, I'd be able to build these small walls and have a nice secure economy moving forward. Player 5 and Player 8 are just sparring with their armies, and even though P5 has a significant advantage in the scout mass, he backs away to the spears, but he has gotten 2 eco kills with this army, so he's done a great job of pressuring Player 8. Player 3 goes for double range on the way up to Castle Age, and this is going to be Armenian Cav Archers or crossbows probably. I wouldn't like Armenian Cav Archers because they don't have thumb ring, and he probably is just going to go for crossbow here, but that really means these ranges are super late because they should not be coming up right as he's hitting Castle Age. We'll check that out though. Player 6 has tons of vills on stone, and he'll go for a castle drop now, and he's not sending this too aggressively forward, but he's just going to build it defensively. And P7 does send in some camels, but camels aren't going to do that much damage, and even if this was 2 knights, you would still be able to get a Spanish castle up, especially if you have to send all the vills. The spearmen, though, will discourage these from doing any type of hard commit, and there's just not really too much P7 can do to deny that. We'll build our castle directly in front of our pond, and this is protecting our gold as well. This is kind of like a red phosphorus build in this sense, because we're just trying to protect the core parts of our economy that are really going to power us forward, and the parts we can't just relocate and protect by running or putting them in houses. The 7 fishing ships have a really nice food collection right now, and they're going to be the baseline of the eco that we need to produce elephants. But we're not going to be able to produce villagers and elephants off of 10 food economy. I don't think that would even work for Ballista Elephants, but I don't know the exact number, especially when you consider the wide variety of food sources on this map. But those food sources are a blessing because we'll be able to go out now and build mills to get Ballista Elephants out. We do get our first one queued up now, and player 3 is going for the crossbows. But again, these ranges were way too late up, and he just doesn't have the unit mass to pressure this area right now. But again, these ranges were super late because he went for the market, and he's only got 3 crossbows out right now, where he could maybe have 8 to 10. The castles in these positions create kind of a lockdown situation in Castle Age because neither player is going to go for like a ram or petard play at this distance. So any units in this area will really just spar with each other and probably not be able to get too much value against villagers. Our elephants are very slowly moving out across the map, and we do see most of the enemies, and I've decided to go to the east here because I know there's a castle up from player 1, and I don't actually have a hard confirmation on player 3's position. I do have 10 fishing ships now, and they're absolutely ripping in the food, and we're not going to have too much problem producing elephants now, but I don't have one in the queue currently, and we'd really like to see that constant elephant production. And the scouts have returned to fight P8, and P8 really doesn't seem to be having an easy time with these units whatsoever, and he'll be in a ton of pain as he's taking this damage. As our elephants finally arrive in player 5's base, we're getting gill nets, and we have 43 economy, still an 8 eco lead on all the other players in the game, which is of course driven by our 11 fishing ships, and we have a massive eco lead of over 1,000 resources more collected than anyone else in this game, and we haven't made any Khmer farms. We will start to do that eventually, but again, we really have no need right now, and we don't have any floating resources, so we're just cranking out the elephants as quickly as possible. Nothing in Castle Age can deal with elephants, and player 5 will just be forced to retreat his eco and abandon these farms, and these villagers are just fully migrating toward the east of the map. The elephants will just continue to loop around. As Red Phosphorus always says, you should just loop your units as much as possible, especially when you're going for these early Castle Age unstoppable power units. We are of course not in this game cutting villager production, so we're actually going for an eco play as well as a heavy military play. That's what having 11 fishing ships does. You have 11 more eco than your enemies, so you can go for more villagers and more army. The Conks are completely locking down the front of player 7's base. They only have 4 kills now, but they've done about 700 damage. But he does get a little bit more active now, and he'll be rewarded as the villagers have to retreat here. And then as we move in toward player 7's base, our armies will be united, and P7 goes for a conversion on the Ballista Elephants, which are definitely the best counter unit, but P6 will go ahead and snipe that for us. We'll be able to move in together now, and P6 has the range advantage, where I have the unit that can dive in underneath the town center and tank the damage, but there is a monk, so I back away. Player 6 sees the monk, but he decides not to dive in underneath double town center fire, which is probably the correct call, and we just back away here and keep looking for damage elsewhere. Player 3 continues to pressure this area, but as I mentioned with the castle position, it really is just a lockdown situation, and he's not able to reinforce this position. This again comes down to having the Market Blacksmith fast castle instead of going with the double range. But again, it's just really tough against Megadai and that castle position. Our units are now all over player 5, and he gets the monastery out, but the monastery doesn't really work when the monks are going to pop out and immediately get killed by Conks and Ballista Elephants, so these units are just in a world of hurt. P5 is going for another town center on the outside, and deciding that we've probably done enough damage to these players because P7 has bottom score on the enemy team, and I know P4 is pincered against 2 on the edge of the map, we'll go ahead and leave their base and start to focus on economy. At this stage in the game with 56 population, I do get heavy plow and I start to make farms. There does come a point when you want to start adding farms on African clearing once you start to run out of efficient to collect resources in your mills. And it's also really just easier to add food economy at farms, which are stable and long term, rather than continuing to spend your APM clicking your units out to mills. So we'll go ahead and recover our economy as we pull back our army and think about the next area to hit. The only player who I know hasn't taken damage so far is player 3, because I know P1 is right next to P2. I can't imagine he's in a very strong position. So my elephants, once again, just start to chunk their way across the map. Player 5's light cav will pull back, but they can't engage against the conquistadors. They're just such a hard army to deal with if you don't have a large mass of ranged units yourself. Player 3 does now have a large mass of crossbows, in fact, but he doesn't have them quite in position to protect player 1's villagers, and they're getting pushed back by the Mangudai, which are just such a strong unit. And P3's crossbow micro is definitely leaving something to be desired, even when his eco management was so lovely. Player 1's woodline just gets completely rinsed by the Ballista Elephants, and we're just walking around P3's base now, trying to kill anything that we can. We don't have ballistics yet, and you can really see it with how the Ballista Elephants totally missed that crossbow they were targeting, and I noticed that there's a large Expo army in my face, so I'll go ahead and back off and get some upgrades. P3 is getting ballistics, he has +2 on his crossbow, and my elephants really aren't going to take the best trades against this army right now, and P3 should be able to pretty easily play a hit and run strategy against this army and kill it. But once I get armor upgrades, if I can get the ballistics upgrade, and if I can get husbandry for speed, I'll be in a much better position to start to take fights against these crossbows. Ballista Elephants do have one more pierce armor than a knight by default, so if you get up to that first cavalry armor even, you have 4 armor, which is the same as a +2 knight, and that'll put you in a really strong position. This one Ballista Elephant, even though there's an entire army chasing it, is just such a problem for P3, and we're getting ballistics now, and we're chasing down these villagers, and they're just not quite able to get away because the Khmer Elephants are too fast. They're just such brutally hard units to deal with, and this warrior priest won't be able to stop them. And they've got 17 kills now across these 9 units. They're just so oppressive. I'm accidentally getting forging right now. Forging does not benefit Ballista Elephants, so don't do that. I should cancel that upgrade, but I don't think I did that because I don't remember canceling it. It's just a total mistake. Now that we do have ballistics, though, we are getting on top of these crossbows and starting to get double kills with our volleys, and it's just so painful for player 3, as if he tries to hit and run, the elephants will catch up to him, and there's just not really a lot that he can do with this army because his crossbows don't kill the elephants, but the elephants just demolish the crossbows. So it's a completely impossible situation, and you really need Mass Monk Mangonel to deal with these units. But that's really a much better option in Imp when you get the Onager upgrade and you have the massive range advantage with the monks. So these units are pretty uncountered in Castle Age, except maybe again by Mass Monk, Onager. But if you go Mass Monk, the Khmer will add in Light Cav, and it's really a tough situation. They feel just immune to town center fire, and the total HP of this elephant army just decreases so slowly when it's getting poked by a town center. Player 4's Mangudai dive underneath Blue's castle to snipe the Treb, and he will lose several Mangudai here, but he's really just in a hold position. The Ballista Elephants find some crossbows here, and P3 dodges ballistics like a beast, but then he tries again and gets double killed once more. The Elephants, again, just don't get stopped by these units, and you just can't play crossbow against them. We're walking directly into this crossbow army, which will take some pot shots against the Elephants, but again, the HP just doesn't really look like it's going down on this army. It's barely noticeable. I think they had 1700 HP in total when they walked onto that TC like 5 minutes ago. They just go ahead and will walk under another town center here because, again, TCs do like no damage to elephants, but elephants completely fry TCs, and this elephant army is taking off more than 100 HP per volley on this town center, and it's just completely devastating. They've got 31 kills across this small army of 18 elephants, and 3 of them literally just showed up right now. We only made 24 elephants, but it was a unique unit fest with the conchs and the Mangudai as well, and the enemy team really wasn't able to keep up here. We didn't go for a boom game, but had the biggest eco, And player 5 had more villagers than we did, but we have the 11 fishing ships, so we're just in an amazing position here to have power units and a great boom behind. This strategy can be countered if the enemy attacks you early, and even though it's a little bit of a simplification, if you don't die from making the dock, then it's going to be a great investment. Thank you for watching. Please give the video a like or subscribe to the channel. This is Varus. Have a great day.